Hi everyone and welcome back to Can You See Me? This is a podcast where I hold space for you so that you can be fully seen, heard and accepted as you are. Remember, in this space, we do not judge. So join me as we take a journey of self-discovery and finding purpose. I am your host, Nganga Gashir. But we talked about cutting through the noise. And I remember taking you through the journey of this young man who wanted to pursue entrepreneurship, but yet the parents wanted him to do something else. And so, even as we think about this different type of noise that we talked about, remember we talked about the cultural noises that affect us. That is the unspoken expectations of the society and the rules of the society. And the second type of noise we talked about was the familial noise. So the noise that comes from your family. So your family, of course, think that they have a say as it pertains to what you are supposed to pursue as a career. And we know that there are some careers that are prestigious in our families because we come from traditional families. And it's okay to have those kind of expectations. And we also talked about the digital noise. So the noise that is there, especially on social media, and the kind of noise that is being pushed by, of course, our influencers out there, and of course about the entrepreneurship culture, the grind culture, and also the kind of noise that is brought about by people out there on social media, because of course we know that everyone is seeking for your attention online. And I hope that even as you went through last week's topic, that you took time to reflect. I don't know where you are at, and I don't know if you took time to reflect on that the specific areas that we talked about. But on this episode for today, I want us to continue to explore that area. And I know that we are living in a generation where so many people are stuck in their careers. We have so many people who are dissatisfied. There's a level of emptiness in our professionals today, and even for those who are doing business. And I used to wonder, why is it that you can find someone who is successful, they've made it in their careers, they're making a lot of money, they're climbing through the social corporate ladder, and they're doing well, externally. But deep down, they are feeling a deep level of emptiness. But I came to discover one thing, that even as we talked about the kind of noises that we listen to and the kind of noises that we succumb to out there, that determines the kind of choices that we make, I've realized that most people have made decisions when they are younger as it pertains to the kind of careers they want to pursue, and they wanted to really conform to the expectations of the society. They wanted to conform to the expectations of their families, and they wanted to conform to the expectations of their friends and social media. And even as they did that, yes, they became successful, but at the end of the day there was a misalignment. There was a detachment between what they really wanted to pursue in life and what it is that they are doing. And so at the end of the day, when they go home and they are alone, they feel the level of emptiness that they've never felt before. And so it's important for us to understand that fulfillment is key, even in terms of what you are pursuing as a career. And most of the time, we rarely think about fulfillment. And even as I engage with people out here, especially young people that I love hanging around with, I usually ask them questions like, what is it that you want to do in your life? What is your passion? And these difficult questions that I usually ask them. And most of the time I realize that they usually just talk about money. I want to be wealthy. I want to own real estate. I want to travel the world. I want to buy expensive jewelry. I want to to wear designer clothes, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I want you to understand one thing, and that thing is you need to do something that aligns with who you are. And the reason why most people are stuck, and the reason why most people are dissatisfied with whatever that they're doing out there, is because whatever they are doing does not align with who they are. Now picture this. Have you ever gone to a hospital setup and you find a nurse who is not interested with you, does not want to listen to you? They are busy on the phone. Remember guys, this is a disclaimer. I do not have any issue with nurses. Don't get me wrong. But it's just an example of what I've seen. So you find someone in a space where they do not fit in. And because at the end of the day they want to earn that salary, they have to stay there and just grind through that environment until they just get to month's end and get their salary and move on. And I've realized that most people are in that space. And even as we talk about this topic, I want to ask you, if you're seated there, ask yourself a very simple question. Is whatever you're pursuing the thing that you love? Do you have a passion for what it is that you're doing? Because if there's a disconnect between your passion and what you're doing, then you will be dissatisfied with whatever you're doing. And so, fulfillment is just a simple word that means a deep level of satisfaction in whatever you do. And this deep level of satisfaction comes when, first and foremost, whatever you do and who you are align. So, just take a look at what you're doing. Does it align with your values? Does it align with your giftings and your talents? Are your giftings and talents being deployed in a healthy way in whatever you're doing? Do you have a love for that which you're doing today? Because if there's a disconnect, I can assure you, despite of the levels of wealth that you create, you will still be dissatisfied. And another thing that I've realized is that whatever you do has to align with meaning. Let me ask you a very simple question. Do you find meaning in whatever you do? I'll give you an example of myself. I love helping people, and I love enhancing the quality of lives of people through whatever I'm doing, as a purpose coach, as a guide. And I can imagine if I'm placed in an environment that does not allow me to help people, I can assure you I will struggle. And I will give you an example of what happened to me some years ago. And I remember I got employed in an organization. It's a very nice organization, and the kind of job that I was given was a really noble job. But the issue is that I used to struggle just being in that environment. And I remember when I went home after work, that period was the most joyous and happy moment for me, because I would just celebrate and say I am out of that place. And when I go home, I would be happy. But when I wake up in the morning, I used to feel the burden of going to work. And I remember when I got to the office, what I used to do is just get online and do things my way. But the reality is, when I went behind the desk, I would just go online and do searches in terms of what it is that I needed to do so that I can be able to become who I wanted to become. And so I wasted my time, I wasted the resources of the company, and I wasted the resources of the employer, and I wasted their time. And I remember I had to make a decision. And for sure I made that decision, and I walked out of that company. And I think that was one of the most important days of my life, just being able to be real to myself. And so I want you to understand that even as you watch me, I know that some of you are in spaces where you're not comfortable. I know that you are in an environment where you don't feel like you fit in. I know that you are in a space where you don't feel like your talents, your giftings are being deployed in a helpful way. And I know that some of you are in positions where you're not growing. The thing is, when you sit down alone, you will realize that at the end of the day, the motivation behind what it is that you're doing is not the right motivation. And I know most of us, the motivation is money, which is not necessarily a wrong thing. But I really desire for all of us to be able to connect with purpose, to be able to connect with meaning in whatever we do, and money will come as a byproduct. And so, I know we are living in a culture of grinding, a culture that celebrates hard work and a culture that celebrates productivity and being able to move and do things and explore and innovate and do all these things. But at the end of the day, the question is, even as we do these things, which are not necessarily bad, but are they aligned with you? And of course we know, as Africans, when we meet each other on the road and we don't know each other, of course the first question would be hi. And then the second question would be, what is your name? And of course after that, the third question is of course obvious to all of us. What is it that you do for a living? And so sometimes that question, we have taken it and we have started living it. But for me, I believe it is not about what you do, it is about what you become. And so if you're in an environment where you're just doing and not becoming, then it becomes a challenge. And now I know that the question that you're asking yourself is, now how do I move from being stuck and to find fulfillment in whatever I'm doing? Of course, one of the strategies that you can employ is journaling. I have found that journaling is one of the most important rituals that you can partake as an individual. I've realized that when you sit down and start writing your emotions and start writing the things that you love and start writing the things that you can start thinking about and the things you can start reflecting on, then what that does is gives you perspective. And when you have it written down, it becomes something that you can always go back to when you feel like you're off path. So journaling is a key ritual that you can take as an individual, even on your road and on your way to finding fulfillment in whatever that you want to do. And the second strategy that you must employ if you want to find fulfillment in whatever you do is seek solitude. I know that some of us, we are afraid of being alone, because when you're being alone, you have time to really think about things without the noise that really clouds us. And I know that most of us are afraid of being in a space alone. I know that some of us cannot even stay for a minute without our phones. So it's important for you to take time in solitude, in silence. Just go, reflect, collect your thoughts, be alone without the noise and the interruptions that we have in a noisy world that we live in today. And I can tell you for sure that will add a lot of value to you. The third strategy that I have seen really work for me is being able to just being true to yourself. I know that most of the time we are really crowded with the noise and we are really carrying the burdens of expectations from our friends and our families and our cultures and our societies, that sometimes we just choke on who we are. But I want you to understand that you need to be bold enough and stand out to be counted as a person who accepts yourself as you are. Remember, the way you are wired is for you to pursue a certain way or a certain line of career. You cannot tell me that as an introvert, you're expected to be outdoors and shouting and screaming and being in parties and all these things, they cannot align. But when you take time to look inwardly, you will see that there are things about you that are very unique. There are things about you, there are giftings about you that are very unique. There are innate abilities that you have that really can guide you towards what you're supposed to do. But I know that most of you are afraid of standing on your 2 feet and saying, this is who I am. Because of course, standing on your feet and saying, this is who I am, is not common. Because all of us want to conform to a certain system, a certain pattern of life. But I want to really challenge you to stand up and become who you are meant to become. That even as we come to a close of this episode, I want you to just take time and ask yourself those difficult questions. Remember, we started off with noise. And I know that most of the time, the people who find themselves stuck in their careers are people who made decisions when they were younger. And those decisions were informed by the culture around them, by their families, by the digital space. And they decided to just settle on what people think you should be, and not on who you are and what you think you're supposed to be. I want to ask you a question. That even in your space, in silence, remember we talked about silence, why don't you just ask yourself that very difficult question? And that is, why is it that I feel stuck? And I can assure you, when you take time to look back at your life, you realize that the decisions that you have made in the past have really informed where you are today. But remember, it is not too late. You can still stand out and be chosen and become who you are meant to be, and not be afraid. Become fearless and bold in whatever you think you are meant to do, and be who you are meant to become. And at the end of the day, I can assure you, we will celebrate you, not because of what people think about you, but because of who you are. So if this episode has been of value to you, remember to like, share, subscribe, and be a part of us. And remember, stay rooted, stay grounded, and don't forget to ask yourself the very simple question of, can you see me? If you have any comments, if you've gone through some of the experiences that you have gone through and maybe you want us to engage further, do not hesitate to drop something on the comment section, and we will be there to guide you through your process. I have been your host, Nganga Gashie, and it's been a pleasure to serve you.